All right, and we are recording. What's up? This is the Gaming and Gaming Accessories Podcast. My name is Garrett, and I'm with my friend Ben here.
Yeah, I'm that guy.
He's
Ben.
that guy.
I'm the guy from the thing. Definitively.
Normally we're going to do this live, but we are recording because YouTube doesn't let us live stream for 24 hours after the creation of the channel.
Foresight to make the channel beforehand.
Hey, look, I was going to, but I kept forgetting, and it's not my fault. YouTube is trying to protect themselves from bots.
I know.
But we got a couple topics on the board today. We're going to be talking about the Windows 11 leaks, some E3 stuff. There was some good stuff from E3. A lot of people say it was a good, what do they call it? A good show. But if it's a good show, is it actually just mediocre? You know, when was the last time we had a great one? But I digress. And depending on our time, we probably will hit it. Memorability in video games. All right. So, do you want to start on the first topic?
First, yeah, sure. Windows 11. I mean, you know, I guess, honestly, you should take the lead because basically, for those who are unaware, Windows 11, you know, big shice. In terms of the fact that, as opposed to, you know, basically instead of just keeping Windows 10 and having it be the end-all be-all for Windows, instead, Microsoft has at least not announced, but it's leaked that Windows 11 is in fact going to be a thing. So much so that there has actually been copies that have been pirated, to be honest. And people have been looking at them.
So I feel like we're going to have this up before they actually announce it. They should have a conference on the 24th.
Yes, like 3 days
from what I've heard, it just is Windows 10 with a facelift.
Honestly, like from the screenshots and everything I've seen, that does seem largely accurate.
Because they centered the taskbar, like your sound area and like calendar and clock are relatively the same.
Yeah.
They curved up some edges, kind of made stuff look a little neater, I guess.
Yeah.
Which I enjoy. What I want to see from it, personally, I really want transparent taskbar to be a native thing in Windows.
Yeah, you were talking about this, and I like because I think we both talked about how we've had it happen either. I think it might be because of NVIDIA or something like that, but it does look rather it looks rather nice when it is transparent.
Because it's always when you update your graphics card drivers, the taskbar goes transparent, and I'm always like, dang, that looks cool. Can I keep that? But then the next time you full screen a window, it's gone.
Yeah. I will something to comment on in terms of the facelift, or the either accusation or, you know, whatever you like to call it. It is largely true because from what as you said, things do seem to be centered, which is an interesting choice in terms of Windows and anything really, because you always sort of have your left and your right, but now you have a right in the center, which is, you know, it's all right. And assumedly, if you put enough icons, it'll eventually get to both sides of the screen or whatever.
But admittedly, it does look a little empty on the screenshots. It looks a little empty on the right corner.
It looks weird, but you know, of course, that's just adjusting to things. And I think on the note of facelifts, they definitely, you know, I think this is pretty much plain to see if you've seen the screenshots or just seen videos on it, that they definitely are dogging after Apple, at least to some degree, because, you know, if you've ever even used an Apple device or a Mac, ideally, everything is that sort of rounded and just generally trying to seem more
professional,
futuristic. Yeah,
that too. I mean, I see in the screenshots you can move the taskbar to the left again. You can move.
Yes, I do see that as well, which is nice. But it does seem, I don't know what is the I don't know what the point of changing it is, but maybe it's just a design decision. Really.
Yeah, I kind of like the fact that the type here to search is no longer there.
Because I always like type here to search, I'll be honest.
But it's good, but you can just, if you're on your desktop, I believe if you just start typing on your desktop, it will just open it up.
Though
so like
something I'm, oh, sorry.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
I was going to say something I'm happy to see gone is Cortana.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She's not there on the taskbar. Unless they changed her logo.
She probably is within. She might be within the search menu, to be honest. But still, not being directly there is definitely nice because there are probably about 5 people who use Cortana, and all of them are probably above the age of 60. So,
yeah.
Not to say that's necessarily a bad thing, but I mean, come on.
Like, did you see the?
You wanna, well, what's going on?
The logo changes in File Explorer.
The logo.
You know how like
yes. They've actually added images to as opposed to just having it in the bottom corner.
Well, no, I'm saying like you know how when you're in File Explorer you have like documents, music, videos,
and those have been they've added, they've colored them and they gave them little. They've basically just integrated the previous icons that would be displayed in the corner, basically.
I might be wrong,
or what? Because like videos is normally. It shows a little video clip in the bottom right. Now the new videos sign looks like a little video on the file.
Yeah, and that's I might be wrong, but were they pretty much the same for like a really long time? I know File Explorer basically did not change.
Yeah, File Explorer has always been files. Of course, coming from filing cabinets, yada yada yada. And I mean, there's still files because that's just what really the common term has become. But the design hasn't changed, and I once again would argue that this is sort of not parodying, but taking inspiration from Apple to some degree with more color in general, as opposed to keeping things very format and standard.
Back in this was a long time ago when I had my first desktop, desktop that was actually mine, and I got Windows 10 on it. I always felt that File Explorer felt so off. It felt because it basically didn't change from Windows 7. So everything else felt so new, but File Explorer still felt the same.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. File Explorer has, as you said, been the same for a very long time because it's not... I mean, even then, it's still easily recognizable to people who've used Windows before. But, especially that it's been easily recognizable even for people who are on XP or Vista. The Windows 10 is pretty. I speak partially from experience. That Windows 10 is easily recognizable as still File Explorer, and I guess maybe that part of that reasoning would be the fact that if people do or have been hesitant to upgrade and now only or recently upgrading, then keeping things looking similar would probably benefit those people who aren't as adaptive.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who would probably be like, I can't use it because it's too different.
Yeah.
Whereas younger people are really open to new things when it comes to their devices.
I mean, that's you could go full societal on that if you really wanted to in terms of being open and not.
But before going too far, do you like I don't know how I feel about the widget center.
The widget, I mean, they haven't really shown how the widgets work just yet. Because I know, I saw the widgets were able to access, and I saw somebody try and drag it onto the desktop, and then it just ended up with a little link or a little icon, as opposed to if you can put the widget on the desktop itself. I don't know. Because I mean, it is sort of trying to make it more akin to mobile phones, at least I would assume. And a couple of the other features are more geared towards laptops and things that are more transportable than a desktop computer or computer with a tower, I guess I should say.
I believe they're going to try and make it easier for the tablet laptops.
Yes, because with the I mean, maybe not easier because there always was the option to have an on-screen keyboard, but being able to change styles on it, change how it works and stuff like that, at least I would assume is what they're trying to do. But that would definitely be more geared to people who don't already have a keyboard that they can easily use or have a touch screen.
Did you know that Windows Vista had widgets?
I did not.
Yeah, so I don't know if you ever used Vista, but I remember as a kid having the puzzle, some toucan puzzle that I would put together on the desktop. One reason that people hated it is because people did not like it because at the time from what I remember, CPUs and just computers were not
Oh,
nearly as
I see this.
powerful.
Yes.
It would strain the system unnecessarily. It would
Yes.
unnecessarily push, because like think about it right now, you can get a 4-core, 6-core, 8-core processor for a lot cheaper, and they probably didn't. I don't want to say they didn't exist back then, but I don't
Right.
think most Vista computers were probably single core or dual. I
Right.
mean,
I get what you're going after, though. Yeah, it would definitely, of course, be a change of pace with a much more, or at least when computers have sort of technology is leaped, so to speak, as a whole, and on average, there probably are there is more processing power in a computer than there was, meaning that widgets are probably more reasonable, especially like things like wallpaper engine and stuff like
mm-hmm.
that always have something that is constantly moving and is sometimes interactable. And of course, there is I don't know if assumedly it would pause if you weren't tabbed in, but maybe it wouldn't. Of course, that would be a big problem just really as an oversight. But if it, of course, it stops when you're in a full screen of a window or anything like that, then that'd be fine, really, because it wouldn't have any effect unless you're looking at the desktop. Of course, having multiple monitors and having one open on a desktop and one that's not, but then once again, multiple monitors, separate issue, really.
Yeah, multiple monitors don't take that much power from a system.
Right.
Now,
but of course, having the widgets on one monitor and then trying to run something else, that would still take, I think, more so.
Yeah, it would take something, but
it wouldn't. Of course, with the higher processing power, it would be worrisome. But
yeah,
if they were left running on an older PC, I could see where it would get sort of strenuous on it.
So I guess we've kind of tackled a lot of the big things. Do you plan to install on day one, whatever day one is?
Yeah, right. It really because I guess the best way to say this is that I am not too big on like new tech in general. Because there's never a bad reason to be somewhat maybe not concerned, but a little bit more willing to wait things out, patient, let's say, when it comes to new technology, especially just because really glitches, flaws, and errors. And of course, personally, I've never really been as excited for a new piece of tech, or especially something as at least seemingly inconsequential as this, in comparison to something like a game or a book or anything like that. Not that I'm much of a reader, but it is one of those things where it's a weird thing to be excited about, at least in my book. So I'll probably weather the storm, so to speak. Of course, if it's shown to be good and it actually does have features that would generally improve the experience, then yeah, sure. But for now, it's, as said, is sort of just a Windows 10 facelift.
I'll probably be installing it on day one, just because not only am I almost expected to stay caught up on all the new stuff, but I honestly I like change in like my interfaces because I like stuff fresh. Like, I move my desk. I move my desk, my PC layout all the time because I want something different. I want something different. I have contemplated.
You feel that way.
Yeah, I have contemplated installing Linux and trying to maybe switch over to Linux just because I want something fresh, but also still keeping Windows on a different drive, because not all games run on Linux as of right now.
Issue, really.
But I definitely will be updating. If it's really bad, I'll go back. Like they do that. Like when 10 first came out, you could restore back to Windows 7.
Yes.
But what do you think about? Because a couple years ago, I don't know if you knew this, but Microsoft basically was going to treat Windows like a service. Like, okay, we're just going to continue updating Windows. Windows 10.
With Windows 10 being sort of the end.
The end. Like, no more working from the ground up, which I don't think Windows 11 is from the ground up.
Right.
I feel like
building off of 10.
Because a while ago, they talked about Windows 10X, and I have a feeling that Windows 10X just got rebranded as Windows 11. But They were basically saying all Windows 10, nothing else, that we're stopping here. I mean, are they going back on it? Because they put an end of life date for Windows 10 of 2025. Mm-hmm.
It is. I mean, they probably are, but it's one of those things where, I think. I don't know if I'm supposed to mention this man by name, but both of us ended up watching a funny Linus Tech Tips video, and very funny man, I think. But no, he's pretty dang good in terms of when he knows what he's talking about. And, he did, especially when it comes down to Windows, and he made the point, and I think this is an extremely rational argument, is sort of what did people expect? Because, I mean, Microsoft at the end of the day is a company, and, they're going to make decisions that would benefit a company and keep continuously updating a service as opposed to making upgrades that could potentially, of course, be paid for or add new means of monetization. That's sort of the way they'll trend. Windows making something like Windows 11 is definitely trending in that direction, as opposed to just sticking with Windows 10 and allowing people to sort of rest when it comes to new things. But, new things are always going to be tantalizing, at least to some, and, that's perfectly fair in terms of business strategies. So
yeah, I mean, but if it's a free update, like Windows 10 was to 7 users, and to this day, and I've done it with other people's computers, if you put a Windows 7 product key into Windows 10, it will still activate. So technically, yeah, they're not shoving it in people's Windows 7 faces, because Windows 7 is no longer supported. The end of life hit a while ago, and it hit for like Enterprise a while ago as well. But for the first year, it was saying like, hey, download Windows 10 now. But if you just do it yourself and you put in that Windows 7 product key, it still works.
Yeah.
So, because it's kind of hard they code something like, okay, we're going to code this Windows launcher to accept Windows 7 keys. You can't just then have it not. At least I think. But
I think, just to comment on, I think they're going, because everyone, of course, who has Windows has seen the little, tumor on the taskbar, which would be the little weather section, as well as, of course, quite a few other things. And, of course, I think, while the weather is, at least in my book, no doubt the most practical feature, looking at some of the screenshots from Windows 11, especially the widgets, they seem to include many similar things.
Yeah.
To this new sort of taskbar. And because while the weather is no doubt something that is, about as apolitical as you can get, or as, it's just weather. Everybody technically at least needs to know the weather. But talking about, or not talking about, but putting in different just different sort of news articles, especially like one of the more important, or one of the things I see right now is that there is a little article from Market Watch, which is 12 most incredible deals you can get right now on Amazon Prime Day. And it's one of those things where I'm not going to comment on Prime Day, but that's a whole other basket of eggs. But it's sort of this, at least the way I see it, it's a pretty nicely subtle tactic in terms of getting people to go on more news sites and going on news sites, either for, just usually for things like tech, whereas, it's like, oh yeah, this is incentivizing you to buy something. Like that one's more clearly plainly laid out. But even then, even with other news articles, there's always going to be ads. So the way I see it, especially if Windows is exclusive in terms of who gets to go where, you could see them making some money. And there's also some stuff about stocks and suggesting, like, the two stocks that are suggested are both AMC and Apple. Both of those are huge companies. Or at least those are the ones that immediately show up. So, I'm not necessarily saying they're making somebody pay for the top slot, but I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if they would say, hey, chuck a couple bucks our way, and, we can ensure that people see you even when they really don't want to.
Well, that's most definitely what it is. If you click that article, they're probably making a couple cents as if it was you clicking on an ad.
And of course, while that is very inconsequential, that adds up fast, especially on something that's on everyone's computer. It's not,
we're talking
because
millions.
when it comes to something like an ad on a website, you have to choose to go to that website. Most people, it's, a pretty basic choice. It's either Windows or Apple. And, as you said, Linux does exist, but, and most people, at least by the way I understand it, choose Windows for the most part. But, having a, at least practically captive audience who, of course, people get bored or whatever you want to say, or just are curious, then go on there, bam, free money.
Yeah,
and with those widgets, that's going to be the same thing, except even more accessible.
Yeah, it's one of those things like, don't use it, because if you don't click it, they're not. You could say like, oh, what if there's still data collecting, and they probably are. They probably are data collecting on you to then feed you more relevant. I
didn't realize
articles. However, take that as you will. Some people will say, "Oh, I don't like the fact that they're data collecting," and some people will say, "I don't care. It doesn't. I don't care. What are they going to get off of me?"
Yeah.
That's a whole nother can of worms.
Oh,
whether you
can actually turn it off.
You can. Okay. Well, then there you go. I have a feeling this, because it just got added, is probably going to be pretty similar to the widget thing. But we won't know until we try it. Again, we'll probably hear more on the 24th, which is only a couple days from now.
Yes. Of course, I think the optional nature of it, of course, is nice, but I would be surprised if some of this wasn't already, already put on the desktop, and only for those who, because, while it isn't that hard to figure out, a lot of the time people really just can't be bothered. So, it's one of those things where if you put it on there, you say, yeah, you can take it off, but it's going to take you some time probably to figure it out. Or even if it doesn't, it's going to feel like, well, it's probably going to take me some time to figure that out. So people are probably just in general, at least feel as if that, well, I'll just leave it there. Who cares?
Yeah. I'm excited to see what happens.
I'm definitely interested. But I don't think it's necessarily going to create any outrage. It's just more subtle marketing. And that people have been doing that for who knows how long.
Oh, yeah. No, it's nothing new. It's not like people are going to be like, Microsoft's doing this now. No, they've been doing it for a while. But
I will also say, I think I heard claims that there was changes to the Windows Store. And yet,
yes.
Like, not really.
I can't really notice it.
Gather, like, I don't really. I mean, there is the aforementioned rounded edges, and the sort of attempting to be more futuristic. But if you ever pull up the Windows Store, which no one really ever does in the first place, or the Microsoft Store, it's just the same thing but with sharp edges.
Yeah.
There's also changing. Yeah.
If you put them both next to each other, I'd be like, oh, are you just like viewing it at a different time and it's just showing you different stuff? Like, I don't know. A lot of people don't use the Windows Store. It came around in Windows 8 and it's just kind of there.
Yeah, basically.
Do you want to talk about E3?
Oh, well, I mean, unless we have anything more Windows related, then I don't want to.
We can, I guess, whenever it comes out, we'll give our feedback. Yeah. I'll give my feedback definitely because I'll be installing it. But E3.
Yeah.
You know how I watched the E3s.
Real gaming.
You know how I watched the E3s. I listened to you, tuned into the end of the Xbox One.
Yeah,
and
I screamed.
Yeah.
I mean, okay. So this is going to, just as an opener, how do you feel, because I'm going to give how I feel after, but how do you feel about E3 in general? Because that, of course, will sort of, base the rest of our opinion.
Yeah, E3 has changed a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Like, not only was there one, there wasn't one last year.
Right.
For reasons. And there was one this year. They had time to set it up because it obviously hit them. It hit them unexpectedly last year, which is fine. E3 is definitely something that I want to stay around, but it seems like it's a lot more about companies talking about stuff that that's already out that they're updating. There was a lot of stuff like, hey, we're adding this or we're adding this, but if you had someone who like say the who does Assassin's Creed again? Is that Ubisoft?
Oh, Ubisoft? Yeah.
Yeah, at their conference, they they started with like a Assassin's Creed DLC. And it's like, if I'm sitting down and I don't play Assassin's Creed, and I don't, am I going to care for the next 10 minutes?
Yeah, no. I mean, honestly, I personally, and I'm not sure if this really reflects in most people, but I didn't watch anything except Xbox and Nintendo.
Yes. Well, you should have watched the Verizon one. You know, Verizon had an E3 conference, and all they did is talk about how they love gamers, and it was basically an ad, a Verizon 5G ad, like Verizon Internet for like the entire thing, and it was kind of funny because they're gamers, they care about gamers.
Gamers, yeah, of course. We obviously care about you, and especially your money.
The Xbox One, they put out some pretty decent titles, but back on topic of what I think about E3, I think it's just too much of, hey, we're adding to this game, game. Maybe not in the case of Xbox entire conference. Sure. They showed a lot of new games, but
there was partial. And I think Nintendo's conference was pretty good in terms of new stuff. At least people were excited about quite a few things. But there was also a lot of
coming to Switch.
That's really good.
Square Enix. I heard a little bit about their conference. Yeah. And apparently they're adding like all of the like 16-bit or pixel, Final Fantasies to PC and mobile.
I mean, that's nice, but it's not a new game.
Yeah, but a lot of those games are already on PC and mobile.
Right.
And not on consoles.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It seems like I want these companies to have this conference where everybody can come together and just it's like a whole week where we're only talking about games, and that's cool.
It's a neat idea, yeah.
But Sony dropped out.
Yeah. I mean, because that was really, if we're going to be honest, that's a point of hubris as opposed to anything else, is it not? Because weren't they not attempting to do their own little thing?
They tried to do a stream like Nintendo, and it did not do well.
Right.
I don't know if they did anything this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, because I guess, and this is going to be somewhat off topic, but tangents are part of the point, and on the note that Nintendo has something that is rather unique in terms of games, is that the fact that it is undoubtedly like things like Mario, like, it's one of those things where it's almost akin to something like Star Wars. There's like hardly a single person who doesn't know what Star Wars is, and Mario maybe even more so, where there's hardly a single person who doesn't or who couldn't recognize Mario. And, of course, all that behind maybe, something like Mickey Mouse, but still, it's almost sort of that similar Disney effect, where Disney will make, Disney makes a ton of movies, of course, and, but what people always think about, of course, is the classics. And the same thing goes for Nintendo. Nintendo makes a ton of games, and some of them are, unique, different, and maybe even not off a pre-existing series. But what people will always come back for is Zelda, Mario, and maybe, you could count like, what is it? Metroid.
Metroid. Well, people want Metroid. The problem is they haven't been delivering.
Yeah. But they are now. I mean, hey, what was it? Metroid Dark? Or something?
Metroid something. Yeah, so believe it or not, that game was rumored like almost 20 years ago. Yeah, Metroid Dread. Yeah. That game truly went through development hell, where it was canceled, uncanceled, canceled, uncanceled. Now we're actually getting it.
Yeah. But once again, I guess what's important for before we get back to our original sort of point, is that, it's this big thing where people did want Metroid, and they still do, and Nintendo is more than happy to sort of prey on that. Mm-hmm. Say, we're going to give you your new Mario Party, we're going to give you your Metroid, and we're going to give you your new Zelda. And it's like, wow, because they've established a classic, and that is so important. And you could argue that Microsoft was doing a similar thing with Halo.
Which Halo looks a lot better now.
It does. But it is one of those things where I think it's also the accessibility of Nintendo games. Because while Halo is no doubt classic, and a lot of people know it, it's generally viewed as a gun game. And when I say that, I mean a game that has guns in it. A game that has guns in it is always seen as, or at least maybe demonized or otherwise sort of condemned as bad for kids. And, whether or not that's true is a whole other thing. But on that note is that Mario doesn't have a gun, to my knowledge. And, he's perfectly fine. And, same thing goes for Zelda. And, like, Metroid, it's a laser gun. Who cares? But it's one of those things where it's so much more accessible. They're not...
Oh, yeah.
It can appeal to almost any audience. And it's such an impressive feat. And of course, of course, this does get some Nintendo fans called a little childish, but at this point, it's more a badge of honor than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, if you find it fun, you find it fun. Yeah, I see a lot of people. I see a lot of people buying Switches as well, like parents specifically, because it is $300 and it's available too. Yep. Unlike a lot of the consoles, it's available. They aren't. Back to what you said about like Star Wars, Disney kind of thing. Square Enix is working on the. They did the Avengers game. They are working on the Guardians of the Galaxy game.
I saw that.
From what I know, the Avengers game was not good. And they're doing another one. And it's just when I think Guardians of the Galaxy game, I don't think Square Enix. I don't. Yeah. When I think Square Enix, I think games like Final Fantasy and like Nier Automata. Like not Western stuff.
Right.
It looks fun. But hey, who knows? It's gonna be on Switch, but the reason why it looks so good, why the graphics look so good, it's not actually on Switch. It's cloud streaming.
Right.
But back to the topic, E3. I feel like it's the same, but it just feels different. Because it's just a lot more updates rather than like new game after new game. Because they're saying, we're going to bring you 50 new games, but is it really 50 new games and not something that we heard about at last E3 that's still not out yet?
Yeah. I think to get back to, I guess, one of the points is how do we generally feel about E3? You've given yours, and I should probably give mine on the note that I've always been rather indifferent towards E3 because I've never been much of a live stream guy in general, and that's, either a good thing or a bad thing, really, whatever. But it's just one of those things where it's always felt like, well, I'll hear about it eventually. So, and I think there is a certain level of excitement to it, sure, but overexcitement definitely does build disappointment when it's not as as what you expected it to be, and so it's a very mixed bag in my book, where it's like, yeah, it's cool, but it can lead to a lot of issues and stuff like that. But generally, I think it's good, and I do agree that it's changed. But I don't know. The changes aren't really for the worse. Aside from this, is really just the companies themselves making the change to sort of saying, and I think this could be considered what I'll brand the GTA 5 effect. To the note where, well, if we can make money off the same thing, we're going to make money off the same thing. We don't need to have new ideas, and I don't necessarily think companies are running out of ideas, or people who try to pitch games. I mean, the indie scene is more than proof enough to say that people haven't run out of ideas. But it's just one of those things where if it's easy, and at the end of the day, they're a company, and sure, some companies can be led by sort of like countries or legal countries or whatever you want to say. There's despots, and then there's enlightened despots, and that's all really you got. And enlightened despots might say, hey, I want people to enjoy my games. Or despots will just say, well, who cares? I'm making money either way. So, yeah, sure, I'll make money the easy way as opposed to actually trying and doing things the hard way.
We know a company that does that, EA.
Yay, we did it.
Oh, we did it. We made an EA reference. Real quick.
What you got?
Speaking of the Xbox being the Bethesda Bethesda conference. What was that one? But that one exclusive game they're putting out, Starfield. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
It looks like from the trailer. It looks like a Bethesda game. I'll say that. Because I definitely get those like Fallout vibes.
Well, okay. I'll let the expert do the no.
Yeah, you are the Bethesda guy. You're the Fallout guy.
For the viewers' reference, I'm a big Bethesda nerd. Skyrim, Fallout New Vegas, and I will admit I am not as well versed in the older games. I can be accosted for that as much as anybody really likes to. But fact of the matter is, I still like the newer games. At the end of the day, of course, Fallout 76 is Fallout 76. Everybody has the same opinion on that. But generally, I'm pretty partial to. Like, I like Fallout 4 all right, but of course, New Vegas is a classic. Skyrim's pretty good. Oblivion's pretty good. Everything, all of it should be taken with a grain of salt, of course, as with everything, but I like it. They're generally one of my favorite in terms of producers, and of course, they've been going downhill, which is really safe to say, with, once again, Fallout 76, and some even, have put that as a sort of a grave for Fallout, really. But Fallout 76, of course, has been improving, yada, yada. And I guess to get to the point, Starfield, it's nothing. To be frank, they have shown the bare minimum in terms of Starfield.
CGI trailer, that's it.
They've hardly tried. They haven't even, because, aside from, some heartfelt, at least seemingly heartfelt words on the fact that, oh yeah, we've been working on this world for 25 years. And it's 25 years, there is a lot. I'll give them that. But you don't have 25 years worth of things to see.
Yeah.
Because they have, because something important, especially because while Bethesda has never ventured into sci-fi, I'm a sci-fi nerd as well when it comes down to things, and they just haven't. They haven't shown anything that is relevant. It seems a lot more grounded than other sci-fi experiences because they haven't really shown the people. They haven't even shown if they're, if the people are, if there's advanced robot, if there's advanced robots, if there's people, if there's aliens, if it's just, and it's not to say that you can't, without aliens or without robots, you can still have a successful setting like that, but they just haven't explained anything. They've said, oh yes, we are Bethesda, we make games like these, so you can technically assume this game is going to be similar, but with things like Fallout 76 and, people have a lot of doubt about Bethesda, and it's well, if you don't give us any confirmation as to what the hell you're doing, then we're just going to say, well, it's probably just going to be another flop.
Space Fallout. Space Fallout.
Yeah, it is, because, the big distinction, of course, between Fallout and Skyrim, aside from different stories, different settings, is the fact that one has guns and one doesn't. At the end of the day, that's it. And, one has magic and one doesn't, but it's it's basically, that's the baseline distinction. And I don't know, because I think, to talk about other games at the Xbox conference, another studio that was picked up by Xbox recently would also be Obsidian. Obsidian were, as mentioned, in terms of Fallout, are pretty big in terms of New Vegas, which is, everybody says, the best of them. I'm not really partial to disagree. But, they did a similar thing for the Outer Wilds, where they said Outer Wilds 2. Outer Worlds. Outer Worlds, right? Damn.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like Outer Wilds. That's a good game too. But yeah, Outer Wilds is the one I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Outer Wilds but point of that matter being is it was a lot more tongue in cheek, which is, I think it is everything should be taken with a grain of salt when it comes to companies in general, if not a whole shaker. But it's just this whole idea where oh yeah, we're being tongue in cheek about what we're doing. So, you're inclined to say, oh, hey, look, they're self-aware. They're not just a company. And yet, it's well, they're still a company at the end of the day, as heartbreaking as it is to admit. And, it's well, yeah, you didn't show me anything. That's for sure. And you acknowledge the fact that you didn't show me anything. But that, I still do notice the presence of nothing here.
I want something more than this. They showed a lot of CGI trailers.
They did. There was CGI trailers are sort of the easy way out. Yes. In terms of yes, this is generally representing our game. This is a game that this looks like a game. It could be a game, but of course the game's going to be rendered not in, CGI, so it's going to look like a video game as opposed to a movie.
Yeah.
Shockingly.
Off topic, but
yeah.
I saw a lot of people who for some reason thought Bethesda was going to put Starfield on PS5.
Yeah, it is. I mean, even if they wanted to, it would be an odd thing to do, especially when, the main reason, of course, at least one could assume that Xbox or Windows or whoever, Microsoft, whoever you want to call them, has scooped up freaking Bethesda's so that, they could have exclusives.
Yeah.
Especially from a company that is as big as Bethesda, or at least either is or as or was. But
Microsoft wouldn't spend all that money just to do multiplayer.
They wouldn't do it if they did. Yeah, if they didn't think it was an investment that could directly benefit them, they wouldn't invest.
Yeah,
and it is back to the note of Starfield, getting a little bit off topic with Outer Worlds. I am because Outer Worlds, because that's also a sci-fi game.
Mm-hmm.
And it is also an RPG, or at least, assumably Starfield's going to be an RPG. But it's one of those things where the original Outer Worlds wasn't very good. Like, it was good. I won't argue against that. I enjoyed it. I played it, but it just there was a little bit lacking. And you've probably heard me rant about this a couple times, but some of the characters fell a little flat. It would generally felt like a pretty short game when they probably could have just like a little bit more world development, made it a little bit longer, because a lot of the world spaces felt pretty dang empty in comparison to how vast they were. They were a little bit cramped, but I mean, you were going between different worlds, thus the name. And of course, everything can't be huge, but other companies have done better easily. And so it's just like one of those things where, you could have done better. It's like, not the worst thing in the world. Because it was, and I guess that's another thing, coming back around to Starfield is, and I know this is of probably little concern to you, but just on the note that, are they going to make it a map game or open world? Because
I thought it said open world.
Right. It? But it did, I think. But what I mean by that is there's when I say that, I mean, because people wouldn't consider games like the Outer Worlds to be open world, because you can go around and do whatever you want. It's open world is almost sometimes used interchangeably for the word non-linear, and while the Outer Worlds is somewhat linear or whatever, but I mean, you can sort of do. There's basically a world space that you can explore, and unlike. I mean, even then, like most games always have some element of non-open world, even if they're somewhat open world. It's usually a mix, to be honest.
Yeah, like cutscenes and stuff, you can't really get around that.
And the most sort of important thing for people who know, like games like the Outer Worlds, but another good reference would be something like Dragon Age or Mass Effect and things like that, is how is space handled?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm sort of asking. How is travel in space?
What's that one game that has been in development hell for the longest time? Oh, and it's supposedly the space is actually endless.
Yeah. I know what you're talking. Oh, I don't
it's
even know, man.
Something about real time space travel kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. It's just insane, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, and
to some degree,
it supposedly not too long ago, I don't remember dates, but it just got out of alpha. It's been in development for a long time, and it looks cool. It looks really cool. But how else can you handle space if you're doing space? Destiny created its own planets.
Mm-hmm.
Destiny had its own stuff. They would have to make their own planets because. I mean, would they use real planets we know? Are they
Destiny does a mix,
Yeah.
You can be on Earth, you can be on Mars and things like that, but there are a couple of locations in Destiny that are fictitious, but there are also quite a few locations that are sort of moons of planets that aren't often talked about.
Yeah.
But they're usually a little bit, even if they are realistic, they will usually be, somewhat fantasized to some degree.
Yeah,
but that is my right. I think
fantasize.
Destiny's a good point of.
Sorry.
Go on.
No, fantasize opens up the creativity of level design.
Right. Mm-hmm. Running around the moon is, at least as the moon is right now, would definitely not be exciting. Of course, if you put a couple secrets on the moon, or you put a couple space bases there, and put criminals or something and monsters, and it's like, yeah, that's cool. It's you have to everything that's produced always has some layer of fantasy, even if it's trying to be the most gritty and accurate. You're hardly ever going to be able to represent something 100% to how it is or how it was. But on the note of Destiny and the way the map works in Destiny is sort of my original point. Is because there's games like No Man's Sky is something I've been into more recently than not, and of course not always kind of sort of known about. But
I played a little bit.
You fly between planets in that, and of course you fly between systems on a map. And the map, I think, eventually does become sort of necessary. But I guess my question really does become, what is their plan? Because if because almost the way every space game is handled is going to be the way games like Destiny handle it, where sure, you're flying between worlds, but it's more or less shown as opposed to played. But considering how it's called Starfield, it almost seems like there's it's not sort of, the emphasis is less on the worlds themselves from name-wise and more on the stars, assuming that exploring the stars will be more important than just exploring the different worlds, would almost imply that there would be some kind of interplanetary travel that isn't just looking at a map.
That would make sense. I mean, Starfield, Field of Stars, right. You're probably going to be doing some space travel, maybe even space fighting,
Yeah, that's because that adds an entirely different angle in terms of upgrading ships and getting new ships and stuff like that. And it's just, it's a very sort of, and if they don't do that, then, well, what's the game going to be like? Because that's sort of what's going to set Starfield apart. Because as nice as, aside from story, setting gameplay-wise, a lot of that is really just, is there guns or is there not? In terms of, and of course, because the way the game plays, either first person, third person, or strategy or RPG is, of course, really just set by the developer when they go out to make it. But setting is the only thing that can really affect the sort of what in the gameplay in terms of, oh yeah, there are guns in this setting, therefore a lot of the combat will be gun-based, or there's guns in this setting, but the ammo is scarce, so guns are extremely powerful, but melee weapons are usually a necessity. Or if it's a medieval setting, there may be magic or there may not be, and really bows can be extremely powerful but difficult to use, but the main thing people use is melee combat with swords and axes and all the different stuff that can come with that. And I think what would set, because as you said, space Fallout, the only thing that would set Starfield aside from space Fallout, aside from maybe some kind of weird psyker magic system, and as I said, it does seem more grounded, so that feels very unlikely, would be some form of space combat in terms of, because all you're going to be doing otherwise is trucking from planet to planet and shooting people with guns.
Yeah, I feel like there's going running around space combat,
right? As opposed to running around a post-apocalyptic world and shooting people with guns most of the time. You can play melee, and I assume, as with every RPG, really, there's always got to be a melee option for those kind of players. I'm usually one of them, to be honest. But it is one of those things where I don't know. There's not enough released yet, of course, to make a dedicated decision on whether or not it's I'm going to like it or not. But it's just one of those things where space is such like an open book. They've sort of categorized themselves from what they've shown in trailers. But then I guess, assumedly there's going to be an overarching story, and they said there's going to be a lot of decision making and a lot more RPG elements than have been come to be expected from things like Skyrim. But knowing Bethesda, they'll probably beans it in some way or another and just end up with space Skyrim or space Fallout. But can't be pessimistic with everything. So I don't know. But that's honestly how I feel. Is I don't know. I'll have to see.
Xbox also announced Forza.
They did. That's
very happy about. Very happy.
Yes.
I'm gonna buy it day one. Because we actually have gameplay of this one.
Oh, I'll definitely buy Starfield. Don't get me wrong.
Day one?
I'm that kind of stupid. Yeah, I'm that kind of stupid. Don't get me wrong.
Because I was just about to say, I assume you haven't decided that yet because we don't have any gameplay, nope. But you are the Bethesda guy.
It's less of a, it is, the reason people buy new games, especially day one, is curiosity. That's like plain and simple. It's like, because there's no guarantee that the game's going to be good. Aside from platitudes and seeing gameplay beforehand, if you buy a game day one, you're like, well, this game looks cool. And that's it. That's all I know. I haven't seen any gameplay. I haven't heard any story. I don't know anything. I'm curious to see what the game is, so I'm going to buy it. And that's not necessarily bad decision-making, but it is decision-making that sort of cuts out, what you've heard, really.
Well, isn't that what gameplay trailers are for?
It is, but even then, gameplay trailers, it just shows somebody else playing the game.
And
you can never fully capture it. And you'll never fully get...
Gameplay.
Right, and it's usually, of course, choice gameplay. It could be gameplay, because something worth noting, a game like Cyberpunk. So I consider Cyberpunk a decent game, but that's, once again, a whole other thing, a little bit lacking. But the gameplay they showed for Cyberpunk was this one really cool thing, because basically it's this whole idea, and you use it, from what I've played like maybe, I feel like I've maybe played half the game, but maybe only played like a fourth or eighth, really. But it's this feature called, I think it's called Brain Walk or Mind Walk or something. And you sort of, they show yourself, plug yourself into this big chair, and then you go into like this sort of camera feed, and it's all these different features where you can sort of rewind scenes and advance them and all this really like cool stuff. And you can and then you can even like go into somebody's mind while they're in that simulation and like see what they see, and because everybody has cybernetics or whatever, and you can learn different information. And it's a really neat idea in terms of like solving a mystery, except sort of solving it in a more interesting way than being able to see things after the fact. You can see things during. And that's such like a cool concept without ever having to be there. But it was choice gameplay, because as said, I have used this feature maybe 4 times. Like the bulk of the gameplay has been run around, beat the shit out of guys, maybe do a little bit of hacking or whatever, and that's it. And like, I do love the running around and beating the shit out of guys. That's fun. And the story's like decent or whatever, but there's hardly as much investigating as it seemed like there was going to be from that gameplay trailer. And I think that's what, you always need to look out for until you have, because I think, you can get a lot more information once the game's actually out and you have, a YouTuber, which is technically more of a trusted source. Of course, if they're sponsored, then, that sort of throws things out the window. But generally, a YouTuber will be at least semi-willing to give their own opinion and sort of what they've seen, as opposed to sort of a company or, a developer choosing what they want to show. Because, showing your best side is, the logical thing to do, obviously. And yet, of course, the best side is not really what
the most.
It gives a good
accurate.
idea, but yeah.
Most indicative of what you're actually playing.
Yeah.
But like,
and of course, it does apply less to things like Forza, and which is really honestly a boon more than it is a burden. But just to the note where, I'm going to be driving cars in this game. I know I'm going to be doing that, and that simplicity is, as said, really a blessing. On the note that I don't really have to worry about what the hell I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be driving cars. That's what I want to do in the game, and that's what I'm going to do, because if they didn't make you drive cars, then the game would instantly flop.
Yeah, and I mean, they kind of have to show gameplay,
right,
in a Forza trailer because
it's so simplistic. It's one of those things where you have the framework to build on easily. You don't have to create a new one, because they're taking a lot of things that already exist. Their settings are already, you're setting yourself in Mexico. It's not like you have to create a whole setting and make all these different features and come up with all this lore or whatever. And of course, Cyberpunk is based off a pre-existing material, but of course they always make edits and changes and stuff like that. And it's just such like it's so much better on that note because it's easier.
Yeah. Well,
things being easier for the company. Oh, maybe not easier, but it's relatively just to the note
they did do a lot of stuff.
Oh yeah, no, of course they have to add new features, but you always will have that base framework that can carry you. Because with things like RPGs, and maybe you could argue this for shooters as well, people will, I don't know. It's hard to classify things. And, of course, there are basic elements of an RPG that a game can rely on, but because of the way RPGs work, you're always going to have something else. And the same thing goes, as you said, you have to add new features to Forza. It's one of those things where if you're not adding new features, then people will say, well, and I think we have had a loose conversation on the note of
will they? Like,
oh, I mean, will they is definitely up to. I mean, how minimal the features might be, I definitely think they will, but how broad those features are or how important they are is always going to be subjective.
Because I mean, sports games exist.
Oh well, I mean, it does. There is sort of a hierarchy to it in terms of complexity, and once again, complexity really shouldn't be regarded as a good or bad thing. To be perfectly honest, it's one of those things where, sure, the complex things can be nice, but sometimes it's nice to be able to understand something without having to think.
Mm-hmm.
Because at least not everybody, of course. Honestly, part of the appeal of games like Forza is the fact that, I can drive a car without having to have a license or any experience. That's pretty cool. But
drive a supercar at that. Most people can't afford a supercar.
That is right. And that is probably at least more to the appeal of people who can drive. And of course, it doesn't cost gas and yada, yada, yada. And of course, driving games have their own appeals in their own right in terms of racing and things like that, especially like Forza. But it is one of those things where it can appeal from multiple angles because of the simplicity. Things like RPGs, it gets too complicated. Because, like, if you set, let's say, an RPG in, let's even say space. If you set an RPG, like Starfield, if you set an RPG in space, if there's people who don't really care about space and couldn't really be bothered about, like thermodynamics does not really have anything to do with space, but as an example, thermodynamics, if they don't really care about the setting in an RPG, that can just drive people off immediately.
Well, yeah, if people don't like Japanese style, they're not going to play Persona.
Right, exactly. And that's the thing with all those sort of games. But when it comes back down to racing games, things like that, it's no doubt there's going to be racing. And that can appeal from multiple angles to multiple demographics.
Yeah.
Because, you can either say, well, yeah, I just want to really go around Sunday driving without having to pay for gas. Or, yeah, I really want to get in this fast car and see the top speed I can hit. Or, yeah, I just want to play with my friends and, drive in front of them and crash into them or to just have some fun. And, there's many more than just those. But it can appeal to so many different people. And that's really, once again, just the absolute best thing you can really have.
Yeah, I mean, it looks great.
It looks nice. It's beautiful.
They went off, what was it? They recorded like 12K footage of different places in Mexico and put it in the game. And like, thinking about that, so like 12K footage into a game that you're probably running at 1080p or 4K. Mm-hmm. So not only is 12K, a lot more sharper. Think about this. Looking at, and this is just how monitors and stuff work. Looking at a 4K video on a 1080p monitor is still going to look better than looking at a 1080p video on a 1080p monitor. So, even if you're not running the game at 12K, which nothing will, nothing's going to run that game at 12K.
Someone obviously, yeah.
It's still going to look a lot better than if they were recording it in 1080p, 4K, 1440p, like that kind of stuff. It's going to look great. There's going to be some new, like, I went through I went through every race in Forza 4, in Forza Horizon 4. And I played a good amount of Horizon 3 as well. I also had Horizon 2, and I played a little bit of Horizon 1. So I like the Horizon games because of the open world. I don't like the motorsport games. I've never tried them. I just don't think I would like them. It is funny, though, that there was supposed to be a new motorsport game probably like a year ago or something, and Horizon 5's coming out before it.
Yeah.
They were doing like back and forth releases, so you would get a Horizon, then you would get a motorsport. Then you get a Horizon, then you get a motorsport. They skipped the motorsport this time around.
Yeah.
Do I blame them? I don't know. I haven't looked at the sales figures of a motorsport game versus a Horizon game. But it appeals to a wider range because one, you're stock racing and you're racing in ovals, The other one, you're going to go into a mountain and drive off,
Yeah.
You're going to go do an exhibition race. You're going to race a jet. You're gonna race some dirt bikes. You know, you're gonna race a freaking boat. You know, I just think they probably have a wider audience. And in my opinion, I think Forza is the best racing game that's out. The best racing game. Because it's just so much more in depth. Like, I know people love Gran Turismo because it's been around since the PS1, but I don't think there's a racing game on PlayStation that has that same Forza Horizon feel. Finding cars in barns and fixing them up. And customizing your own cars with your own custom vinyls and tuning it up. The tuning, I don't do much tuning. I normally just go and find someone else's tune that they made. But the fact that you can tune all your stuff up to the tire pressure, to the amount of air that is in your tires, you can tune the car just how you want, is crazy.
I think that is... Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. I just haven't seen a racing game like that.
Yeah. I do think that once again comes back around to that broad appeal. Just to the note where it's, not to draw an analogy that may alienate some, but D&D. I know. But, Dungeons & Dragons, as some may know it, is a game, shockingly, tabletop game and all that good stuff. And with any tabletop game, it's this sort of, especially with 5th edition, there's this broad appeal where they have simplified the rules, and of course it's still very complex, or well, to some degree. But there's still a degree of complexity that isn't in, standard games, because you can't just boot it up and play it, you have to learn it. However, that complexity is flexible, and I think that's what sort of, once again, another sort of merit to Forza is the idea that this complexity is optional. And the same thing would go for D&D, because in D&D, you can play a human fighter and, be the most basic guy in the world and still have a pretty dang good time of it. Or you can play like a wizard who has a bajillion spells and you can try to optimize your class. And of course that comes into power gaming, but that's like a whole other thing. But my point is, in terms of Forza, you can have some like 10-year-old kid get on there, play with like the super souped up BMW, download their tunes from download other people's tunes from the best working ones from online, and then just whip everybody in a race easily, and still have a fun time. But if you really want to get that level of complexity, you can do the tunes yourself. You can pick out the car that you like specifically and just have a good time. And it's great because you can try. There's a myriad ways to play it, as well as, aside from even appealing to those different demographics.
Yeah, I also think even the thing with like selling your cars, it struck me as odd that in Forza Horizon 4, there is no microtransactions there's microtransactions, there's like you buy DLC packs, but there is you cannot buy money. So if I wanted to buy that car that's on the auction shop, like there are cars in the game that the game can sell to you, but you cannot sell them back, so you cannot get your money back. And there's a crap ton of cars that you can only get in like different events during the game at certain times of the year, and even depending on the year, like the 86 like Trueno, like the initial D car. If you did not play during the event in February of 2020, you cannot get the car unless you're buying it from someone else. And it's always sold for $9 million money, and there's no way to buy money with real money. You just have to play the game.
That's admirable as well, with different reasons. But yeah.
Yeah. I think Horizon 5 is going to be great. They say it's an even bigger map because Horizon 4 was already a huge map.
Right.
Huge. To the point where you could take a good 10 minutes just driving to a race if you didn't want to fast travel.
Yeah.
So it's going to be great. It's going to look great. I'm going to buy it on my PC, obviously, because I don't own an Xbox, but everything Xbox is putting out is coming to the PC anyway. So you could say that I'm still on the Xbox platform because they're trying to integrate the two. I'm buying it. It's going to be a great game, and it's coming out soon.
Hopefully.
Yeah. I don't think they're going to delay it. I haven't seen much
No, I don't think so.
Do I? I mean, I mentioned this to you before. Do I hope that there isn't as large of a bias towards Italian cars? Maybe. Do I care at the end of the day? Yeah, I know that's just me. Do I care at the end of the day? Not really, because if anything, A-class racing is the most realistic. Because it's not really realistic to get a car that's from like 1998 up to 200 miles per hour. But I digress. Do we want to tackle a little bit of Nintendo stuff? I don't currently own a Switch, but
I would like to make a couple final remarks when it comes down to Xbox, real quick.
Yeah.
Because to tackle that sort of theme we said at the start, there is something to be said on the note of this idea that a lot of games are being re-released. Yes. And I think because a lot of the announcements at Xbox, because we talked about the two games, or the game that really caught our interest, and I think it's worth mentioning. Well, what sort of was also there aside from Halo that we sort of talked about was
that one game, that vampire shooter.
Yes, that looked pretty good, but and that was a new game.
And but I guess again, it was just a trailer, so
right. A lot of trailers, as said, a lot of cinematic trailers too. But to seize upon that idea of releasing things there was announcements for Bethesda where they talked about putting more games from Bethesda on Xbox
and Game Pass.
And they did it. Yeah, they did it. They put a lot. They put because I think recently when they picked up Bethesda, they had everything from Morrowind to Skyrim, to Morrowind, Oblivion, and Skyrim. No, not as much Fallout games, but now they have recently added Fallout 2, Fallout Tactics, so all of the top-down games, as well as New Vegas 3 and 4 has been on the Game Pass for a while. But they've added some of the older games, which was an interesting decision. But once again, it is just re-releasing them.
Yeah, if anything, they should have been there already.
Right.
After the acquisition of Bethesda, they should have been there already. And they also announced the Yakuza stuff. It is.
Yes, that's what I was. Yeah.
Yeah, Like a Dragon's there, but everything else already was.
It's a really good game, but everything else already was. So it's one of those things where it is just re-releasing, and things like Wolfenstein as well, and Dishonored, but the newer Dishonored, it just seems like Bethesda was, I guess, maybe holding, and in general, Xbox was trying to hold back some of the newer titles, I guess, to incentivize people to buy them, that's what the companies at least probably wanted. But now they say, hey, well, I mean, if we can just put it on Game Pass, and now it's like, who cares? So that's all that really means to me. And one last thing is the really interesting thing is they talked about a couple games like Dark Alliance was one, D&D back on that D&D game. And the interesting thing, aside from the game, I guess just existing, is that a lot of games like Psychonauts and like that Ascent game and Lemon's Gate and stuff like that, is that they're going to be released on Xbox day one on a Game Pass, which is a really neat concept because it's not really something you else could see. Because I think that's the reason why Game Pass works so well, is because it can feel like you're getting free games as opposed to getting games through a paid service.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and I think especially.
Think about how they're marketing it now, especially if you own an Xbox. Not as much if you own a PC. But if you own an Xbox, dude, Game Pass Ultimate includes Xbox Gold.
Right.
I am not an advocate for paying for online. I don't think you should have to pay to use the box that you already bought. I know consoles are sold at a loss and all that, but that money, when people tell you it's going towards the servers, when I play GTA, I'm using the GTA servers. I'm not using the Xbox servers.
Right.
I'm using Xbox Live, but because when Xbox Live goes down, I can't play online.
Yeah.
So party chat and messages, which is, funnily enough, you're paying for Switch Online. Yes, it's cheaper. They don't even have party chat and messages.
Yeah.
So at least you're getting that, and you're getting some free games per month. Free games in quotations, because if you stop paying for Xbox Live, you no longer own the games.
Right.
But it's at least now, instead of paying $10 a month for gold, you can pay another $5 a month and get a crap ton of games.
Mm-hmm.
Good games at that, AAA games.
Yeah,
They are working their hardest to get more and more games onto Game Pass. Yakuza Like a Dragon as one example. Bethesda games are coming there day one.
Yep.
So if you're already paying $10 a month, what is 15? Yeah, it's another 50%, but again, it's like $15 a month, you get your gold and you get a ton of games, and they're constantly giving it away for $1. Constantly.
Yeah. No, yeah, truly.
So honestly, I think Game Pass is a great service.
It is.
Because, especially for Xbox gamers, especially because they don't have multiple stores like we do. We have Steam, we have Epic. Epic's giving out games every month. They just have Xbox. That's all they have.
I will admit, the only really issue that arises is the fact that this does sort of incentivize Bethesda to try and get old games as opposed to making new ones.
Yeah, because you're not...
Because that would increase the value of Game Pass without really having to do anything.
Microsoft has to know. They are a huge company. They had to have run the numbers and said, okay, if people are paying $15 a month, so they multiply that by 12, see how much people are giving to Xbox a year. Is it the same as if they were buying a game to own? It's probably more, because I'm sure there are people out there, like when I was watching Scott the Woz, he said, oh yeah, I've been paying for Game Pass for months, and it's the third time I boot up my console. So, like, rather than that, but, like, in the long run, you're spending less, but you could be spending more. If you're a type of person who buys, like, one game per year, you're going to be spending more. But if you're someone who buys $60 games left and right, you're going to be spending a lot less. And I feel like Microsoft had to have run those numbers and said, what if we combine the two? The people who barely buy games and the people who always buy games. And everybody goes to one service. Bethesda, being owned by Microsoft, they probably said, yeah, we can make more money off of this. Because they don't make any money on used games. If I go to GameStop and I buy the pre-owned version, they don't make anything.
Right.
So, I mean, of course they make money on new games. They have to. They send out those discs. But that also, they probably make less because you have to print the disc. You have to put it on the disc. You have to create a package. You have to print the package. You have to seal it. All this stuff goes into putting the physical product out. There's a lot of people who want that.
Right.
But it definitely costs them more to make a disc. And then they can't stop you from going to your friend's house and saying, like, here, I got Persona 5 right next to me. I'm holding the disc. Oh, hey, you want to play Persona 5? Here you go. Like, I gave you a copy of... I gave you a copy of Persona 5 Dancing.
Yep.
And they did not make any money off of that transaction because I am physically giving you a disc. So Game Pass can be great, and I think it is great. I think Game Pass is great for the consumer as well, especially if you play a ton of games, if that's your main pastime. But they know... Like, if we just re-release these games, we can make money and we don't have to make new ones. You're right.
Right.
They know they're going to make more money. And honestly, thinking about it, why not just re-release? Why put so much money into development?
Money and effort, for that matter.
Yeah, development and effort. Like, it's not cheap. You got to pay these developers. You got to pay writers. You got to pay artists. But we can just take this game that's already out, and what company does that all the time? Nintendo. Nintendo does that all the time.
Right. Speaking of...
going into Nintendo. Skyward Sword, they announced that again. They already announced that, but they announced it again. Same with Breath of the Wild 2. They already announced that, but they announced it again. Breath of the Wild 2 is a separate game. That's fine. They're still working on it. Skyward Sword looks like I was running it on Dolphin. If I took if I took, and I'm not going to condone piracy, but like, man, you can have your own opinion on piracy. Like, if you own the game physically and you're going to emulate it, that's cool. You own the game, But Skyward Sword Switch looks like I took the Wii game, I played it on Dolphin emulator, I went to the settings, and I clicked 1920 by 1080.
Yeah,
because
I mean,
you can up the res of emulated games. Like
right?
I tried running Sonic Heroes, a PS2 game and a GameCube game in 4K. There was a lot of problems, but I tried it and it ran. Like that's what it looks like, and they're gonna charge $60 for it. But we know one of our friends, already said, "Yep, I'm buying it. I already
Yeah,
pre-ordered." Pre-orders in
yeah,
itself. We can go into that next stream
yeah,
because we're running
yeah.
kind
We
of
should.
long. We should
Uh-huh.
definitely talk about why pre-order a digital game.
Yeah,
You're not getting anything than if you bought it on day one. And
hmm
that could also relate back to the whole conversation about buying games day one, and like it could be crap, it could be not. Pre-ordering is even worse.
yeah,
But I digress.
yeah. Probably for the best.
Nintendo,
Talk about.
the whole thing we had about all these companies talking about DLC. Nintendo started their stream with a Smash Bros DLC.
Yeah, no. I mean, of course, for something
Um,
that's rather popular, Tekken.
yeah,
It,
it's
it,
Tekken, but like we have what, four fighting game characters?
oh, I know. I'm not saying it's
It
necessarily unique, but Tekken is well liked.
Yeah, no, and it's easy as well because it's a fighting game
Right.
character, and they
hmm
work the way those characters like Ryu and all that work is the fact that they're a fighting game character.
Yeah.
Um, I just I'm neutral on it. Whoever they add for Smash, I mean, they added Pyra and Mithra. You saw how
Exactly.
the internet acted against that. But so Tekken, yeah, that makes sense. Because they already did a Mii costume for that character.
Right. hmm
So yeah, Tekken's getting representation in Smash. Cool.
Pretty neat.
That's how they started their
Um.
stream, though. What's
Right.
funny
It
is
is.
the Mario and Rabbids game was announced at Ubisoft's.
Ubisoft. Yep.
Yeah.
And they did give it. I think they gave it some showtime in Nintendo's, but it was definitely an interesting idea. I mean,
Yeah,
of course,
second
that's really
gen.
more of a scheduling issue than anything else because it's not like because it's not to say that Nintendo said, oh yeah, Ubisoft is such a bigger company than me, so I'm going to let them announce it first. It's like no, Ubisoft got the earlier slot date, and well, it involves technically titles that we both own, so they'll just announce it first, and then we'll announce it second.
Yeah, I mean, and they're working together on it. I'm sure they
Right? Exactly.
didn't matter that much. From what I know, I heard a lot of people say, "Oh, it's probably going to be good."
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, that is like one of those. It's like I don't know. It's very much to the fact where it seems so weird that it shouldn't work, and yet it does.
it does. Yeah, it's at first glance, it's like Rabbids and Mario.
And for that matter, not even just Rabbids and Mario. Like that, it's still weird. That's really weird. But then it's an XCOM type game, like a strategy game where you control individual units, and they have like percentage chances to hit different targets, and you have to like. It's a lot of strategy. It's a lot of thinking, at least in terms of XCOM. Of course, a little bit dumbed down, or well, at least changed to fit a more accessible platform. But it still is that there still is like some degree of strategy and such like that, and yet it worked and people liked it. Of course, this could be attributed more to a cult classic as opposed to it being genuinely good. But even I liked it. I'm pretty picky. I'm a big fan of like XCOM, Wasteland, and stuff like that. So I would like to consider myself to be pretty knowledgeable when it comes down to those games as a whole. So, but even then, I thought it was pretty dang good from what little I played.
Yeah, I haven't played it, but I haven't heard negative things about it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Like I played my fair share of Smash Ultimate, despite not having a Switch at the moment. I
Yeah.
still put 200 hours into Smash Ultimate when it came out. No, it's Nintendo. Despite them re-releasing, and despite me not really liking their company morally, we can go into that on another day. They
Yeah.
put out good titles. Like, yeah, they re-release, but they also, when it comes to new titles, they put out some art pieces, you could say, because Breath of the Wild was amazing.
Mhm.
That game was amazing, and that's another one I put like 150 to 200 hours in, and I had the DLC and everything.
Right.
It's one
It was
one
a
of the
very good game.
reasons. One of the reasons I was so open to playing Genshin Impact was because of how much I enjoyed Breath of the Wild. And around that time that Genshin was coming out, I really needed something to scratch that Breath of the Wild itch. I will not say that Genshin is a copy. A lot of, like, when the game was coming out, a lot of people said that. The game has definitely gotten a lot bigger than MiHoYo ever expected. But I won't say it's a copy just because of all the elemental and all that, but it's the reason why the stamina system and the open world and all that worked is because it was so good. Like, they reinvented Zelda. Breath of the Wild reinvented Zelda.
It did. In fact, it got me into the I had tried to play the game before, but Breath of the Wild is one that really got me interested in the characters and the universe and actually playing the game, and it was ridiculously good.
Yes, it actually made me interested in the characters as well.
I think a criticism that has been given by a friend of ours, and I think is generally accurate, is the fact that they're writing Breath of the Wild. And sort of coming back to that classical nature of Nintendo, it should be expected, but especially something like Breath of the Wild that was so, maybe not revolutionary, but was so well received, maybe a little bit revolutionary, but that's besides the point. It's such like it is a logical decision, no doubt, to go back to Breath of the Wild as opposed to trying to go out and try new things, because that is something interesting about the Zelda games in general. While they sort of generally fit a form, they've had games like Skyward Sword, where the gameplay was entirely different. Because I think that's the interesting thing about Zelda, or at least the way I see it, is that it can fluctuate more or less.
They redid Link to the Past, right? Was it Link to the Past? Or
I think so.
Link's Adventure? Something.
There's also Ocarina of Time is a big thing, of course.
Well, most people say that the Ocarina of Time, and like the Majora's Mask HD and all that, they say those are like, they added so much to those games, and that's one criticism that I've seen about the Skyward Sword HD, is that it doesn't look like they've added anything other than upping the graphics a little bit, whereas the Majora's Masks, all that, they added a lot to the game. Of course, the game's not out yet. That for all I know, they could have added a crap ton of extra content. But they re-released Pikmin, the same game, on Switch for $60 when that came out for $40 10 years ago. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. Nintendo puts out great games, but the fact that they have great games, they're going to use,
Yeah, right. No, it's logical, but one could argue potentially that it's something they rely too much on.
Oh, yeah, I would agree. And, of course, there are going to be people who disagree, and that is completely fine. I'm not saying that what I think is the end-all, be-all opinion. All right? There are a lot of people out there who are like, this stuff is amazing, and I want this. I don't care if they don't add anything. The original is fine, and I will pay $60. The reason Nintendo does that is because people will do it. So if you're going to do it, go ahead. It's your money.
Right.
I'm not going to stop you. Metroid. We touched on Metroid a little bit beforehand. We're going to see Metroid Prime. Hopefully.
Right.
We got a title screen. Was it a trailer or just a title card?
It was a little bit of a trailer.
Okay.
Or maybe the trailer was only for Dread. I'm not too sure.
Yeah.
But there was at least some talk of Metroid Prime.
It might have been a past... You're talking
E3. About 2 games. I know that much.
Yeah, it might have been a past E3, and it might have been this one as well, where they just showed Metroid Prime, the logo, and then they said, "All right, guys,
be excited now."
Be excited now. It's still not out. I don't know what's happening with that game. Same thing with Metroid Dread. That thing was in development hell for a long time, and I think it's the same with Metroid Prime. I feel like they very well might have been making the game, and they just might have not liked where it was going and scrapped it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'd rather have a really good game than a unfinished one, Cyberpunk, but that's Cyberpunk's release. I've heard Cyberpunk's better now, but I'd rather have a finished and polished game. Rather wait than have something that's broken.
I do right. On the note of other games that were at E3, or especially Nintendo's E3, WarioWare.
Yeah.
I think that goes into sort of a cult classic territory, but I've always been from what I've played of WarioWare, I really liked it.
Aren't they just using, like, you control the characters? Like, you're not using, like, the motion controls or anything, like the
Yes,
Wii one?
I believe.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I think it's still going to work.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to be great. I think it's going to sell like crazy.
Mm-hmm. But those micro games, it's once again comes back down to that note on accessibility, or and sort of appealing to a broad variety of people. Just to the note where, if it's like, oh yeah, I can play this literally anytime I want. I can play it on the mobile Switch as well as on the Switch when it's docked, and that basically just means that you can do what you want.
Yeah,
and you can just play it if you're bored for like 5 minutes, or you could sit down maybe and even play it for a while, or play when you have your friends over, because it does have multiplayer, which is a big appeal, of course. And but a bunch of stuff, but it looks good.
One of those games. Yeah, on top of that, on top of WarioWare, we're getting Mario Party, which has like 100, maybe 150. I don't remember exactly.
Right,
Mario Party stages from
once again,
last
sort of classic game.
Or was it stages, or was it mini games? Mini games from the from all of the other Mario parties, including the Game Boy ones, which is kind of like I have heard. I watched Scott the Woz, crazy. That the main criticism on some of the new Mario parties was that there wasn't enough games. There wasn't enough.
Yes, I think that's accurate from what I've played.
Yeah, there wasn't enough content. And I think this Mario Party is going to be good. And in terms of Mario Golf, it's really hard to go wrong with Mario Golf. But from what I've seen, it looks fun. Hitting the ball and then immediately running after it.
Yeah.
Like, that looks
like
fun.
Having a little bit more, and having a little bit of competitive gameplay is always interesting as well.
Yeah, that looks genuinely fun. Like, jumping over stuff and all that, trying to catch up to the ball. Like, that seems cool.
Yeah. And competing with other players as well.
Yeah. And I mean, Nintendo announced, like, cloud streaming the Guardians of the Galaxy. They announced Kakarot coming to Switch. They announced a lot of games coming to Switch, and they had that headline. What was it like? There's a lot to play on Nintendo or something like that.
Yeah,
they had a lot of games.
Not wrong.
I just wish Nintendo would have a lot of these games on day one. I know it takes optimization, because the Switch isn't at all up to par with the current like consoles and PC. So they got to optimize everything for that thing, just to make it look decent. You're downing the resolution and you got to down the graphics. But like, what game was it? There was some game that they were putting on there that it looked like a Switch title, but I mean, at the same time, if you optimize it enough, you get games that look like Breath of the Wild, which look crazy good,
Yeah, right.
And so Nintendo can do it. They can do it. And maybe the reason they're not having a lot of these games on day one is because it's the other developers who aren't Nintendo-owned developers, who maybe can't optimize as well for that Switch hardware.
Mm-hmm.
Which brings up the argument of, why did Pokemon Sword and Shield look like it does? And not like Breath of the Wild does or something. Because, man, when I first played Pokemon, I think I was with you at the time, and I got a huge laugh out of walking into one of the first areas, it being sunny and looking really nice out, and then I walked 2 feet and then it was raining.
Yeah.
And it was just like,
well, that's a single.
We couldn't render that. We couldn't, and then seeing Pokemon just like walk 2 feet away and then just de-render.
Yeah, it is. It's just one of those things where they always, in terms of Sword and Shield, they always feel very stiff in terms of the Pokemon's movement. And yet, when they do something like, and of course, the intentions behind the two games are different, but like with the new Snap, that's crazy good looking in terms of the way the Pokemons act and the way they, interact with the environment and such like that. It's just like it seems like such a no-brainer to do it like that.
You've seen the videos of them getting like struck by lightning? I've seen some pretty funny clips from Pokemon Snap where like that Pokemon just got struck by thunder, like the move Thunder, like, and it's pretty hilarious. But yeah, I think, because they didn't talk about Pokemon at Nintendo's thing,
They did,
but because they already announced Legends,
which is surprising. Yeah,
but
they re-announced what was it? The one we were just talking about.
The Pokemon Pearl, Diamond and Pearl are getting a remaster.
They re-announced Skyward Sword, but they didn't re-announce the remasters for those games, which is odd.
Yeah, and Pokemon Legends, the open world Pokemon game, I think, from what we've seen already, this is not about E3 because it wasn't there, but I think that's going to be a good game. I think this is the direction Pokemon needs, so then players, and even old-time players, stop saying this is just the same thing again.
Mm-hmm.
And I know some people love that. A lot of games do that. We talked about that earlier.
Right.
Pokemon is victim of it, and I think the direction they're heading is good.
Yeah, I would definitely say.
But
it's better than it could be.
Unless there's anything else from Nintendo you want to tackle, I think we're running out of time here. So we might want to save memorability of games for next week.
Oh yeah, no, we can definitely talk about that
as well as pre-orders. We can tackle pre-orders next week as well.
Pre-orders would be good,
and it will be live next week too.
Yay!
Because it will be more than 24 hours.
That we don't have
for the fans that we don't have, it makes it easier. Like, I have some decent internet. I'll be able to upload this.
Yeah.
But live streaming it and then publishing it just in the one take fashion that the podcast is. Just seems better.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess we're gonna call it there. Thank you for tuning in to Gaming and Gaming Accessories, the podcast. Maybe we can put out different content. Who knows? We'll see how this goes first.
But actual gaming videos. Wow.
Maybe we could. I mean, if we're ever playing something together, we could put like clips or something. So then it would kind of make it more in depth. Like, we could even do.
Well, we should at least try to stick on genre.
No. I am going to. I want to stick with this podcast, what we talk about and all that. But maybe reviews aren't that out of reach.
Gaming review. Yeah.
Yes. But I digress. Whoever is watching, thank you for watching. Remember to hit that like button with your knuckle.
Don't do that. Don't do that. Bad idea.
0% of you who watch this. 0% of you who watch this are not subscribed.
Subscribed and or liked, yeah.
Yeah, because there is 0 subscribers right now. That means 100% of you who are watching are not subscribed at the moment. Because, yeah. But if you like, leave a comment, hit that like button, and let us know.
Tell me in the comment section, please.
If you don't like it, hit that dislike button. We want to hear about it. Yeah. And maybe if you want to
never come back.
If you want to hear more, hit that subscribe button. But doing the funny YouTube things, got to talk about that. But we will see you guys next week.